Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us for our second RGGI solicitation webinar. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Melissa Evanego. I manage the Bureau of Mobile Sources here at DEP. I want to welcome and thank you for taking the time to attend our webinar. Some of the housekeeping things to get out of the way first is we're recording the session. We'll post the video online, just like we did last week's presentation. And we will also have the PowerPoint presentation online. And that's on our project solicitation page. Please make sure that you're muted unless you're called on to ask a question. Please hold all your questions until the designated Q&A portion of the presentation. There'll be two portions. Please do not type your questions in the chat unless you're having technical difficulties, which prevents you from speaking. And questions and answers that are asked during this webinar will be added to the FAQ document that we update weekly and post on our project solicitation page. So the intent of the webinar last week and this week is to provide guidance and clear answers to aid interested parties in applying for funds. The solicitation is open to local government, public schools, and county colleges. State agencies and universities are not eligible for this funding, but I do encourage all of you that don't fall into those into the local government category to please still submit a project proposal if it's an electrification project. We do receive funding from different sources, and so we may be eligible. We may be able to fund those projects. So as long as I have project proposals in, we'll consider them. So just to give some background, in the 2.5 years that we've been using RGGI funds for vehicle electrification projects, we've administered approximately $125 million, 80 projects with 222 vehicles converting from diesel to electric. To say that we've been busy is an understatement, but the progress that we're making towards Governor Murphy's decarbonization goals is immense. This solicitation, which we call RGGI 6, will provide $13 million for local government electric vehicles or equipment. So like I said, we've been doing RGGI funding for the last 2.5 years. We've learned a lot about how industry and local government works. We better understand how municipal procurement, charging as it relates to medium and heavy duty electric vehicles, supply chain delays, and the whole host of other aspects that go into this grant process. For those of you who may have already received funding, you know it takes some time for us to get projects through the grant administrative process. Because of that, and because we've learned a lot of new things, we took a look internally to see how we at DEP can do things better. We're forging closer to relationships within DEP for all the groups that have a hand in processing grant agreements. So that's the legal department, our fiscal department, our contracts unit. We're all working to streamline the process as much as we can, with hopes that we'll continue to refine the process as we move forward. The biggest change that you will see is that we're moving away from calculating the incremental costs between a diesel and electric vehicle. Instead, we're moving to a flat incentive amount with additives for different categories. These incentive amounts are based on a slightly higher than average incremental costs between the diesel and the electric vehicles, so not much has changed as far as the amount that we're giving per piece of equipment. We're no longer covering installation or consultant costs. Obviously, those costs can still be part of the project, but because we are no longer reimbursing for those expenses, we streamline the grant process considerably, which means we're requiring less paperwork from our grantees, and that saves a lot of time. I'll let Chris further describe the aspect of the program during this part of the presentation, and he'll give you all the nuts and bolts of the program. We always welcome suggestions about our program, but we do have strict legal and financial procurement rules that we do have to follow. So sometimes it doesn't always make sense what we're doing, but we're bound by different rules. So today with me, I have Chris Dahl and Ann Arnold, who are grant managers in the program. They will go through all their requirements and the different aspects of the program. And again, please hold questions until the designated portions of the presentation. Like I said, there'll be one after Chris's portion and then again at the end. I'll now turn it over to Chris Stahl. We'll go over the requirements of the program.
Thank you, Melissa. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Chris Stahl, and I'm one of the grant officers of the Diesel Modernization Program at DEP. I've been at DEP for 5 years working on medium and heavy-duty on-road replacement projects. Before we get started, I'd like to give you an overview of the things I'll be discussing today. First, I'll go over the eligibility requirements of the RGGI funding source. Then I'll discuss the incentive table and how reimbursement is calculated. I'll briefly discuss the Diesel Modernization Program and the requirements of the program. After I've presented my portion, I will turn it over to my supervisor, Ann Arnold, who will walk us through the application process. Next slide is the presentation up. I don't see it. Can everyone see the presentation?
No, it's not up.
Monica, are you able to share it?
Yep.
Oh, there we go. Next slide. Awesome. Thank you. So this round of funding is for local government and for contractors who operate buses or trucks for local government. The contractors must provide proof of their contract with the township at the time the project proposal is submitted. So essentially, you can't submit a proposal without a contract and then obtain one later on. Type C and D buses will not be covered under this RGGI solicitation, but the reason for that is because of the recent launch of the state's electric school bus program. Governor Murphy signed a bill in August of last year for DEP to implement this program over a 3-year period. So funding for type C and D buses will be available through that program when the funds become available. So all project proposals will be accepted and reviewed, but the ones that provide the greatest greenhouse gas cost effectiveness and also provide the best emissions reduction benefits will be given priority. Simultaneously, proposals that have projects operating in overburdened communities will be prioritized, as these areas have been disproportionately exposed to harmful emissions over the years. Next slide, please. So an important part of the diesel modernization program is that on-road vehicles and equipment currently owned by the applicant must be identified for decommissioning. The program is a one-for-one replacement program. So in order to purchase, for example, a new electric refuse truck, you need to identify a currently owned refuse truck to decommission and replace. This is the incentive for DEP to distribute the funding, as the emissions reduction benefits from these replacement projects can positively impact overburdened communities. If your proposal is accepted, eventually you will purchase new electric vehicles or equipment. For a period of 3 years, telematic devices will need to be installed onto the vehicles. These devices will be provided free of charge from the state. At the end of the 3-year period, we will retrieve them. It's important to note in the beginning that this program is a reimbursement program. If your proposal is accepted and you're awarded funding, you must purchase the vehicles or equipment first and then submit proof of payment. Other financial documentation must also be submitted, and then reimbursement can be requested. Next slide. Okay, so as you can see, this is the incentive table that DEP uses to calculate the reimbursement costs. The values in this table represent the average of the incremental differences between new diesel equipment and new electric equipment. The purpose of the funding is to offset the cost of new electric vehicles or equipment. Looking at the table, the first column is broken down by vehicle type with 2 categories: non-passenger like a street sweeper and other trucks, and passenger bus or van. The second column is the gross vehicle weight rating class, and the third column is the base incentive amount. These first 3 columns are where the calculations start. The overburdened community or OBC, small government, SG, and combination of the two are all additive columns and are based on the particulars of your project. We determine whether or not your project is an OBC using data from DEP's overburdened community webpage, where they provide that information. Small government is determined by a population of 20,000 or less residents. So as an example, excuse me, say you're proposing the purchase of 1 electric refuse truck. It will be in the non-passenger vehicle type column. The truck has a gross vehicle weight rating class of 7, so we know starting out that the base incentive rate will be $180,000. Now, if the location of the project is an overburdened community, according to the data, the reimbursement amount increases to $201,000. If the location of the project does not meet the OBC requirement, but it can be considered small government, the reimbursement amount is instead $232,000. And if the location of the project meets both additive requirements, the reimbursement amount would be $253,000 as shown in the last column. For the passenger bus or van category, the only row that will not apply to this round of funding is the last row. Passenger bus or van classes 7 or 8. So for the passenger bus or van vehicle type column, rows 2B to 3 and 4 to 6, you can follow the same track starting with the base incentive amount. It's possible then for your project to meet the OBC additive requirement, but there's no small government or combo additive for the passenger bus or van, because part of the program's purpose is to distribute funds to as many applicants as possible, and providing more additives to the passenger van or bus category isn't necessary because the base amount plus the OBC amount is already enough to meet the average incremental difference of a new diesel and a new electric according to the data. All right, I'll discuss this later on also, but the incentive amount is for 1 vehicle or equipment and also 1 level 2 EV charging station. So in our example, the $253,000 for the electric refuse truck, it would be for the truck and also a level 2 charger. If your proposal indicated you wanted 1 direct current fast charging station or DCFC, an additional $20,000 would be added to the total incentive amount. So instead of $253,000 for a truck and level 2 charger, the total incentive amount would increase to $273,000 for a truck and a DCFC. Next slide, please. Okay, so the DEP program that the RGGI funding will be distributed through is the Work Clean Diesel Modernization Program. There are 5 of us in the program, so if you're awarded funding, don't ever hesitate to reach out to us because we're here to help. Diesel replacements are not the only projects we work on, but medium and heavy duty diesel replacements are a priority. The purpose of the program is to reduce emissions from medium and heavy duty vehicles and equipment, both on-road and non-road. The program utilizes state, federal, and enforcement funding for on-road replacement projects like school buses, transit buses, refuse trucks, street sweepers, and more. We also use funding for non-road replacements, either diesel to diesel or diesel to electric, such as backhoe loaders, bulldozers, and excavators. Funding is also available for marine engine replacements and e-true projects or electric transport refrigeration units. If you're interested in any of these types of projects, you can learn more about our program at stopthesoot.org. Next slide, please. Okay, so this RGGI solicitation funding is only available for on-road vehicles or equipment, But as I said before, we do have funding available for different non-road projects that is first come, first serve. But this particular funding is only for on-road. It is important that the new electric vehicles or equipment be used at least 75% of the time on a project in New Jersey, either shovel-ready or planned in the near future. Something else that's important to know early on is that the vehicle or equipment replacements must be type for type. So for example, if you wanted to buy 5 electric shuttle buses with a gross vehicle weight class of 3, you need to identify 5 currently owned shuttle buses for decommissioning that are also class 3. More importantly, you can't decommission 3 work trucks and 2 refuse trucks instead of 5 buses. It has to be type for type. Next slide. So I spoke about this a little before. The EV charging station requirements are pretty simple. It's 1 charging station will be permitted for every 1 vehicle or equipment purchased. The values in the incentive table are for both 1 vehicle and 1 charger. It's important to mention also that as of January 2023, all level 2 charging stations purchased must be Energy Star certified. The chargers must also display an Energy Star certified label on them. If selected for an award, we will provide additional forms to fill out. On these forms, we provide a link that'll take you to a product finder site where it lists all level 2 charging stations that meet this requirement. If you intend to purchase DCFC, the Energy Star certified requirement does not apply. Also, as I said before, the program will provide an extra $20,000 on top of the incentive total if you intend to purchase DCFC. Next slide, please. Okay. If your proposal is selected for an award, you will receive an award letter from us. We will then have to execute a state grant agreement contract. After that whole process is complete, you can purchase the vehicles or equipment and the charging stations. In order to receive the reimbursement, you must meet both the decommission requirements and the proof of purchase requirements. The bullets listed are the most important requirements. The most important part of the decommissioning process is sending in photographic proof of the operation. The purpose of drilling a hole in the engine block and cutting the chassis is to render the vehicle or equipment inoperable, achieving the necessary emissions reduction benefits. Also, please make sure in your proposals that you provide the VINs or the equipment serial numbers of the replacement vehicles or equipment. Even if you're awarded funding, we can't start the grant agreement process until we have that info. After the decommissioning process is complete, we will send you the reimbursement instructions. The instructions will list out the proof of payment documentation we need to provide to Treasury in order for you to receive your reimbursement. Once we have all of that documentation on file, we'll send you a payment voucher for signature. Then we send all of that decommission and proof of payment information to our contracts and grants unit, who review it and then ultimately send it off to Treasury. Okay, next slide. Okay, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to my supervisor, Ann Arnold. She's going to go through the project proposal application process so everyone can see ahead of time how it works. But before we jump into that, if anyone has questions at this time, feel free to click on the raise hand icon. I think
Looks
we
like
have a
no
question.
questions. Oh, somebody
No.
I think
is
we
raising
have
their
one.
hand.
Yep, Peter, you can go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, multiple applications for 2 different projects from the same municipality allowed or not?
Yes.
Yeah, that should be fine.
Okay, thank you very much.
But you don't have to put separate, if they're the same type of vehicle, you can put that all in one project.
I saw that. We've already submitted on one project, and I just might get a request from somebody in our administration for another vehicle, and it would be a different project. It would be a different type of replacement.
Good, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Looks like there aren't any other questions. So, Anne?
Okay, thank you, Melissa and Chris. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining our webinar. My name is Ann Arnold. I'm a supervisor within the Diesel Modernization Program. I'm also a grant officer. So today I am going to step you through the proposal form that's online. I have a whole bunch of screenshots that I'm going to share with you, so you'll get to see what's on each page of the proposal. Before you fill it out, and there's about 5 pages of questions. So we have a SurveyMonkey link. That's the program we used to set up the proposal form, and it's pretty easy. You may have used them before or even set them up for your own use. So basically, when you click on SurveyMonkey on this link, it'll go to the first page. Next slide. Okay, so when you first click the link, you're going to get to page 1 at the top. You're just going to see a summary of basically, which is a repeat of the wording that's already on our solicitation page. Next slide. In the middle of the page 1, you'll see the table that Chris went over with the incentive amounts. And you'll see where you can submit questions to stop the soot at dep.nj.gov with Regi 6 in the subject line if you have any questions. And you'll see that project proposals are due by 11:59 p.m. on September 4th, 2023. Next slide. At the bottom of page 1, if you scroll all the way down, you'll come upon the first question. So this question says, please acknowledge that you have the following information available before completing this form. You'll also note that there'll be an option to upload files supporting your proposal at the very end of this form if needed, and that is optional. You'll see that we're going to ask for your applicant information, that you'll have that up front, your contact information, know ahead of time if what your applicable classifications are, if you're a small government or an overburdened community. You'll want to know the number and type and class of electric vehicles that you want to purchase. You'll want to know the number and type of charging stations to be installed. You'll want to have the information specific to each replacement vehicle, the type, model year, VIN and serial number, horsepower, fuel type, and annual usage. And you'll want to have all your project details, the location, project partners, and timeline. You'll notice at the bottom here, there is a progress bar, which shows basically how far along in the survey you are. So that just gives you an idea of how much further you have left before you answer all the questions. You'll also notice at the very top by number 1, there's an asterisk. Any question that's required will have an asterisk next to it. If you hit next without answering any of these, next slide, you will get an error. The red arrow there is just pointing to the error at the top. This question requires an answer. Anytime you try to move forward and hit next, it'll flag it and take you back and say that you do have to answer them. So next slide. So for this first question, as long as you check each one, it'll just get bolded out, and that just means it's filled out. So then hit next, please. The next page, page 2, it's going to take you to your applicant information. This is the top of that page. Number 1, you're going to provide your contact information, which is a contact person, the applicant name, which would be your municipality or company, street address, city, town, state, zip code, email address, and phone number. You'll want to note that whoever you list as the contact person is going to be the person that if we have any questions, we would reach out to that person at that email address. And also we would reach out to that same person when we give our awards out that we notify by email. So that person will get notified if you're chosen for an award or if not. The next question, part 2, select all applicable classifications for the applicant. This is where you'll indicate if you're a small government serving a population of less than 20,000. You'll also want to note that if you're a small private company, such as a refuse company that possibly has a contract with a municipality, that's allowed. So if you have the contract with a municipality that is a small government, you're allowed to choose that small government category. The next one is the overburdened community. To download a list of all overburdened communities in New Jersey, click here. If you click there, an Excel spreadsheet will download automatically, and that will give you a list of overburdened communities. You can check the spreadsheet to see if your community is on that list. If you prefer not to download a list, I have the link to the overburdened communities over in the green area on the side. That's not within the SurveyMonkey. That's just here on the slide, so you can look at that ahead of time. That's the website, the New Jersey DEP website. They have a lot of maps and different other ways to see if your community is overburdened. If you choose none of the above, if you're not any of those, you do have to answer this question. If you choose none of the above, the other two will automatically uncheck, or you can choose one or either or both of those. And at this point, you're about 29% through the survey. Next slide, please. Okay, this is going to be the top of page 3. So on this page, you're going to briefly describe your project by completing the following questions. Please indicate the quantity, vehicle type, gross vehicle weight rating, class of each electric vehicle that you will be purchasing. Only complete the appropriate number of sections in this question and leave the rest blank. You'll also want to remember that each new electric vehicle requires an old vehicle of similar gross vehicle weight rating and horsepower to be replaced and decommissioned. If you look at row number 1, the first thing is the quantity. That's how many you're going to get of new electric vehicles. The next column is vehicle type. Your choice here is either going to be passenger bus or van or non-passenger. And then the next one is the weight rating class. And the last one is vehicle description. Vehicle description choices are going to be street sweeper, garbage truck, transit bus, shuttle van, or other. Other can just be something else that's not listed, such as a dump truck or other type of vehicle. So basically, you wouldn't fill out all 10 of these rows. You would only fill out like the first one. Like if you're only getting one type of vehicle, you're only going to be filling out row 1. So for my pretend company here, I was just pretending that it was going to have 2 different types of vehicles. So I utilized rows 1 and 2 so that I could show that the dump truck is in the second row and only one of those and 2 for garbage trucks. Next page. If you scroll to the bottom of page 3, you're going to get questions 2 and 3. Question 2, please indicate the number and type of charging stations you will be installing. 1 charging station per vehicle is permitted for funding. I think Chris talked about that earlier. So question 2, you have to fill out this question. In most cases, it will probably, especially if you're getting level 2 chargers, it's generally 1 for 1. In some cases, you might be requesting less chargers than vehicles. For instance, you might just want to, if you're getting 2 vehicles, maybe you only want 1 DC fast charger because those it can charge 2 vehicles simultaneously and it's much quicker than a level 2. That's okay. If you do want to get less chargers than the amount of vehicles you're getting, we ask you to just explain that in the other box that's listed. Just a short description of that. It's also okay if you don't want to get any chargers with the project. There are options for putting 0 level 2 and 0 DCFCs. If you do that, we will again ask you to explain in other, and that could be a case where maybe you already have an existing fast charger or some existing charger. We would ask for proof at some point that you would upload possibly like a photo or something to show that you have it. And also, if there's other vehicles using it, how you would be able to utilize it for the new vehicle you're purchasing. So we would need some type of description if you don't get the same number of chargers as the number of vehicles. Question 3, please indicate the total number of vehicles that will be replaced, decommissioned. This should equal the total number of new electric vehicles to be purchased. You're going to notice that this question only has 3 choices. It's either 1 to 5, 6 to 10, or more than 10. Basically, this question is here to determine the layout of the next page, which is page 4, and it's going to ask you about the vehicles you're going to decommission. Next slide, please. So page 4, you're going to come upon the vehicles that you're going to be replacing. So as I had said on the last slide, I chose 1 to 5. So it says project description, vehicles to be replaced, up to 5 vehicles. If I had chosen 6 to 10, this would say up to 10 vehicles. And if I had chosen more than 10, this would have said up to 20 vehicles. There's no limit for how many vehicles you can select. But we just put spaces for up to 20. And the reason we did that is that if you're only getting 1 vehicle, we didn't want you to have to scroll through 20 questions to get to the bottom. So on this page, you would only fill out those numbers to correspond to the number of vehicles you're replacing and leave the rest blank. For example, if you're replacing 2 vehicles, complete questions 1 and 2 and leave questions 3 through 5 blank. In this section, you'll see that you'll have the vehicle type. You can type in what you're replacing. And then this is where this is one of the sections that you can be a little more descriptive, whereas in the electric vehicle section, when you were putting what you were getting for a new vehicle, it said other. Here, you can actually type in more exactly what the vehicle is that you're going to be replacing. You put the model year, the VIN or serial number, the horsepower, the annual hours of use or annual miles traveled, and the fuel type and the annual amount of fuel used. Next slide. Once you scroll to the bottom of that previous page, you would have the next button and you would hit next and come to page 5, which is the last page. This is going to ask for more information on your project. These are all text boxes and you could type as little or as much as you'd like in these boxes. We do ask you to be as descriptive as you can. So the first question is, what is the primary location the vehicle will operate within? The next question is, only shovel-ready projects will be considered. Please list project partners. Some examples of project partners that you could provide would be like if you are a garbage trash truck company that has a contract already with a municipality, you could list the township there. Or you could possibly, maybe you're already working with a charging station vendor, or if you've used a vendor in the past and you're kind of talking to them already, you can put them down. Question 3, include a project timeline that identifies start and end dates, as well as the timeline for key milestones. I didn't put very descriptive answers, as you can see, but you can write as much as you'd like to in these boxes. Number 4, has your organization been approved to receive and expend any other grant funds related to this project? If so, please provide details. Here we do need some information here because we can't always stack with other programs, so we just need to know if there's any other grant funds already related to it. The question 5, please provide any additional information that supports this project. In this box, you could either, if you have something that you want to put in here that's not too long, you could type it in. If you don't have anything else to provide, you can always put none or NA, or you can put see uploaded files. And next slide, please. If you scroll down a little further to the bottom of page 5 is the file upload section. You may upload additional information to support your proposal. Please use appropriately descriptive names for all attachments. Some examples of documents that you might want to upload would include expected delivery timelines, documentation of evidence of previous projects, documentation of project partners, such as a municipal contract, price quotes if you already happen to have some, and to show project readiness or anything else that you think would help to make your project stand out or to help us to evaluate it. Then when you go to choose to upload a file, you would click on Choose File. Next page. Then you'll get this little box that comes up. So you can either drag the file to the box, or you can click on Upload a file from your computer, and you can use that to navigate to the folder where the file is and upload it that way. Next slide. Okay, so this page shows once you upload the file, it'll give its name. At number 6, you could see that I uploaded a file there. If you accidentally uploaded it, there's a button there that you can remove it. So you don't need to worry if you submitted something and then realized it was the wrong file, or if you want to replace it, you can hit the Replace File button. And this is the last page of the survey. All the other ones, you notice the button said next. Well, this one says done. So once you're here, once you hit done, that is going to submit it, and you wouldn't be able to go back after that. So after you hit done, it goes to the next page. Next slide. And you'll get the confirmation form that says thank you for submitting your survey. If you hit done here, next slide, you'll just get a second confirmation page, but it is submitted after the first time. Next slide. So now that you submitted your proposal, what happens next? Basically, so the submittals are due 11:59 p.m. on September 4th, 2023. So the next day, we're going to start evaluating the proposals that come in. We're going to look at them in terms of cost effectiveness, proximity to environmental justice, overburdened communities, and also if they're shovel-ready projects. After we do an evaluation, we expect to spend maybe a month. We don't know how many are going to be submitted, so that'll come into play, how long it will take, but we're looking to make awards or select projects for award by sometime in October of this year, 2023. All applicants will be notified via email if you're selected or not. If you are selected for a project, I just have a few brief steps here. I know Chris mentioned a few things of what will happen next. The awardees a DEP grant officer will be assigned, and they will reach out to you. And then there will be additional forms to fill out, and you'll have to submit price quotes. And then the grant agreement process will begin. And that is a big process in and of itself. We typically do have webinars at that point after we make the awards so that everyone has a better understanding of what the grant process is. It'll be a lot more detailed than what this one is. Next slide. So the end, the last slide here has important information and links specific to this solicitation just to help you out. The link to the solicitation on our website is the first link. The overburdened communities, we put that link here again if you need to look at that page. We have a list of frequently asked questions. I think Melissa mentioned this in the beginning of the webinar here. That is something we work on. We get questions by email, and any questions that were asked on this webinar that are different than what we've already submitted will go on to that. So if you do have questions, we do ask that you take a look at this document first, because somebody may have already asked the question, so you might be able to find it in there too. If it's a new question, we look at our questions that come in. If it is something new, we do update this document once a week. The Survey Monkey to submit your proposal link is there. And again, if you have any questions, submit them to stopthesoot@dep.nj.gov with Regi 6 in the subject line. And again, project proposals are due by 11:59 p.m. on September 4th, 2023. And we hope that everyone here submits proposal. And thank you very much for attending the webinar. And if you have any questions, I guess we'll go into that next. So if you do have a question, just, hit the raise hand button.
Peter, you can unmute and ask your question.
Okay, two quick ones. Different towns have different capital budgets set up by year. Is there a requirement of when you will expend money to fund the town's portion of a bus with a grant from this program? Of when the time requirement? Do you have to spend the money within a month or a year or whatever? Did you hear?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is a reimbursement program. So once your grant agreement is finalized and executed, that's when you can start to make your purchases.
Okay.
And then we reimburse at the end of the project.
Okay, understand. One quick other question. In our town, there is a nonprofit organization that runs a home for severely disabled people, and they have a number of shuttle buses. I have no idea whether they're interested in this program, but would they be eligible?
Nonprofits, no.
Okay,
But if they're contracted out to provide a service for the local government, there might be a possibility. So we'd have to look into that a little bit more.
thank you very much.
Questions? Questions? Well, if you think of any other questions, feel free to submit your question to the Stop the Soot email, and we'll answer them in our updated FAQ document that we will put up at the end of the week. Just give you one last moment to think of a question. If not, then we'll be done. And again, the presentation is on the website. We'll have a link to the video for the webinar, so you can rewatch it or you need some clarification. Okay, well, thanks everybody for taking the time out to join our webinar. And again, reach out to us with any questions, and we're looking forward to seeing everybody's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.